Hey there, it's Rusty Nelson, your college art professor, and it is watercolor day. And since my last drawing demo was a figure session, I thought today would be a good day to tackle a face watercolor, another one of those scary faces, one of the most scariest things in the world, a pretty girl. So I have spent some time and I managed to sketch up a reasonable likeness to the reference we're going to be using, and we'll get started and drop in the color onto this piece and see how it goes. I'm working on a 300-pound Bao Hong watercolor paper, so it's going to be it's a good paper, so it's a slow paper and it'll take a while to dry, so we'll see how this goes. Could be a very long tutorial since I tend to have longer, well, I drive the struggle bus when I'm doing these faces because I don't do them that often. So, I mean, I'm always amazed at some of the things you see on Instagram and in the YouTube shorts and stuff with the people who are really dedicated to doing faces and working with people, and they have some wonderful techniques. So let's see if we can pull this off and get a decent looking pretty girl and tackle all the fear factor that is involved in trying to paint a pretty girl. So let's get started. All right, so this is the sketch of the pretty girl that we're going to be working with, and this is the reference right here. So like I said, I worked really hard to get a from scratch sketch of it, and there's various issues. I think I got the eyes about right. I don't think I have the nose quite big enough, and I don't have the lips quite pouty enough, and I think I got the chin too far to the right. So those are all things I'm going to work to address when we get started on the actual piece. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at and what we're going to get started doing. I'm working with a Paul Rubens watercolor pan set with this. I chose it mainly because of the range of the reds. I think there's a nice range of reds that I'm going to be working with on the cheek. The background's going to have kind of a greenish brown to it, and we should hopefully make this whole area a focal point. So like I said, again, I'm going to be trying to, as I paint this, shift the chin a little bit, maybe pull. I think once I get the color on the lips, it might be all right. And I think I've got the eyes looking pretty good. This one might be a bit small. So there's a whole range of just subtle things that I'm going to have to fix as I get going. So, but as is always, I'm going to start with a flat brush. I'm going to drop in the color on the background, and we'll see where this goes right away. And I do have a good range of greens to work with over here as well. So I'm going to grab, oh, that's kind of that's a Payne's gray right there. So let's look at this. That's a blue, so that's not bad either. And I'm going to get a fairly thick mixture. I want some of that Viridian right there. And then I'm going to grab some of this burnt sienna, burnt sienna and raw umber, it looks like right there. I'm going to warm that green up a little bit. And that's a pretty good consistency, although I need a little more of this sepia in it. I'm going to knock down the greenness, get a little more of a neutral in it, throw a little more black into it. All right, so that's a good saturation right there. I'm going to get a little more water in it. I'm going to have a live edge on the background. I'm not going to worry a whole lot about the edges over here, so it is a lot greener than what the reference is, but that's okay. I don't have any big problem with that. It's just we're going to get some of these shapes. We'll just build around. Get some nice irregular edges going here. Things we can mess around with. And we got all sorts of pigment in this. I'm going to just come in and start thinning it out a little bit. Maybe come in just a little bit on the interior. We'll get some shapes going there. All right, so. And as that's wet, I can get another puddle, more of a brown ochre, get a little more sienna in there, and we can start introducing that into the color mixture as well as we work our way around. I don't mind those peekaboos. We'll be able to soften a lot of that stuff up as we go, get a little more green back into it. Right up here. All right, so perfect. That's looking fun. And we'll be able to do all sorts of fun things in here and just create some irregular stuff. We'll be able to play around with that with some more saturated colors. And I'm trying not to rattle and shake my table too much. All right, so that's nice. It came right around this edge nicely. Come around here as well. And I'm just kind of dressing off some of my edges there, just for presentation. Yeah, there's some really good watercolor portrait artists that you can see out on Instagram, on YouTube. They're fun to watch. And they really do pull off some lovely effects in their paintings. So I definitely recommend you, if you don't have an Instagram account, get out there and set one up. Look for watercolor artists. They are really, really good. All right, and as that's drying, I'm going to come up over on some of these edges over here. They're still wet, and I don't care. It can have a greenish tinge to it. This is all going to be overpowered with more color. So I'm just going to kind of soften some of these edges, because we're going to have some soft things going on in a darker hue and value range. So just softening these things up a little bit is not going to hurt any. Right up there. There we go. Okay, yeah, there we go. And that's all just water. I unloaded my pigment out of my brush, and I'm just coming back in with water, softening it up. I do want it sharper along the face, the edge of the ear, and the face here. And then I'm going to get a little more of a blue-gray, if I can find a good blue. I want this blue right there. There we go. A little more neutral, okay. And I'm going to drop a little of that right here. All right, boom. We'll just do it up here too. It's all right. It's going to be darker up there, so with just a little more smidge of green, I think. All right, I want a nice edge right there, right there, right in here. All right, and we're just color blocking. We're just getting the base things set up for all the other good things to happen. Okay, so a little dry brush leading it out. Let me get a little bit of that blue again. There it is. We'll throw that blue right over here on her shoulder. It's too thin. There we go. Get a little more of the green in there. There we go. It's a little darker, so that's all right. She's in the shade over here. And if it flows together a little bit, I'm okay with that. So a little peekaboo right there. Just some other marks. There we go. All right. And I'm going to get that a little further down right here. There we go. And again, I'm painting with that corner of this big brush. Again, I'm going to chant that one more time. Work with as big a brush as possible. If students make a mistake, it's working too small of a brush and not letting the colors kind of interact with each other. I got a lot of color motion happening right up there. So, all right, so I think we have a pretty good blocking right in through here. I'm just going to soften this out right there a little bit, right there. And I like that crunchy edge right there, like some of the blooms happening right there. So, right now I'm going to unload my brush. We're done with the greens and the ochres. I want to just clean up my palette a little bit. All right. And I'm going to mix up, and I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use my little mop right now. So I'm going to get some water here going, and I'm going to find a color that I'm thinking we'll start out. Oh, that's a hot color. I'm going to have to warm that up a little bit. There we go. It's kind of a base orange. There's not a lot of pigment in her face, so this initial color, I'm going to throw a little of that. Okay, a little more of a violet in that. How about that? I think just a little more of a blue, maybe even drop a little blue into it. If we get that base color just right, and it's going to be very thin. All right, so we're just going to kind of come in and see how that looks. That didn't look too bad. I'm going to unload. I'm going to let that push around a little bit. It doesn't have to have a lot of saturation. I'm going to pull it up into the scalp because we're going to have some transitions right in there. All right, and we'll pull this color right down here. All right, we'll pull it right all over the place. Get some pigment in this, and we'll be able to push around and find highlights later on. So being kind of cautious around that corner. I don't want green to bleed into it. We'll pull that color on down as well, right down into that area right there. And I got a little bleed happening there. So we got a little bloom that's going to happen. And I got to get this spot right in here with a little more pigment. All right, so I'm going to get a little more of a blue in here. There we go. It's still it's kind of a violet color. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and start working a little bit of that color. Whoops, right in here. Very damp. All right, it's just a little more density, and I think I'm going to have to let it dry just a little bit. It's awfully wet, so I am going to let that dry for a second. So there we go. We kind of color blocked the background, got some initial color on the face. The hair will happen in a little while after I get a little more color blocked into the shadow areas, the deep recessed areas of the face. So hopefully this will come along fairly quick, and we'll let this dry for a few minutes so I can get a little more precise with the application of some more saturation in the recessed areas. So give me a minute as it dries, and it's normally about that, a minute or 2 minutes as the surface of the paper dries. All right, so it's dried a little bit. I still see a sheen on the surface of the face, so there's not a lot I can do just yet with it, so we will work with it and hopefully push a little more color in and around on the recessed areas. I can take advantage of that wetness right there, and I'm going to drop in a little more of a rose color if I can get it. Yeah, that's a nice color right there. And she's got some really nice color on this side of the face. I'm just going to, and this is where with watercolor you do need to, I think, over exaggerate the colors you might be seeing. I think things will look a little more naturalistic with that. All right, so I need some color right in here on her cheek and right over here, right there. So I got some nice rose happening there. Pick it out. I do have a wickedly ugly looking bloom happening down here, but I think I can deal with that later. So it's going to bark at me for a while. I'm going to throw a little bit of that rose right up under here on her eyelid and on that brow. I'm going to throw a little more of it up here as well. Good. So we got some rose happening. It's really kind of traveling quite a bit, so I'm going to pick a little bit of a highlight right here, right around that Riley method loop, right above her upper lip. And I'm going to throw a little bit of a scrub right on the highlight, the ridge of her nose. Right there. And I got a sharp edge right there. I'm going to soften up. It's still damp enough. I can push it around. Okay. And I'm going to soften these up just a little bit. Just water. Okay. All right, so that rose color, I'm going to grab my 1/4 inch flat right here. So there's a nicer highlight. I'm just going to pick and remove some of that color right there, right through that spot. And right over here, it's awfully sharp. So I'm just going to loosen that up and lighten that up right there. Excellent. All right. There's going to be a highlight right in through here and right down on here. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and get a little more of the, that color right there. That's purple. There it is. I'm going to throw a little bit of a brown into it. So, whole range of reds happening right in through here. I'm going to go ahead and throw a little bit of it right there on her lip. It's awfully wet. There's a little bit of color bleed happening. All right. And then on her eyes, there's a kind of a blue tinge. So I'm going to grab some cerulean blue. And I got a lot of purple happening in her eye. I'm going to drop a little bit of that right in there. Right in there. There we go. And then when we add highlights into it, that'll really pop. So also going to get a little more of that color. I need to put it onto her ear. Kind of in the shade, but there's a lot of highlights on it too, so it just needs to have a nice color base. All right, and then I'm going to get some saturated browns, I think. Get over here. Let me get some of that. There we go. Let's see, that's the Payne's Gray, and I'm going to drop some Viridian into it. Oh, not Viridian, that's Sepia. Sorry about that. All right, good mixture. And I'm looking, I do have a dribble right up here. I'm going to just drop that up. And we're really still kind of blocking everything at the moment. So I'm going to put a little color into the hair, and we'll see where we can go with that. She's got a fairly sharp edge right up here along the side of her head. We'll drop that eyelash or that eyebrow in later. Come right up here, okay. And if we can get that initial shape, and we'll soften everything. All right, get it right up here. And we'll start making some lock strokes. There we go. In the direction of those locks, right up in there. Flesh it out. All right. We got our next layer of hair and the direction that it's going. Right there on our forehead, we'll just try to catch that hair like that. We'll get the next one, and it starts to feather out, but we're going to get some highlights right up in here. All right, so we're going to try to get some of these dry brush edges right up here, catch the top of her head. We got some nice locks. We'll get a lot of these later on at the back end as well. So I'm liking some of that. That's looking good. It needs a little more saturation, and it gets very dark over here. So all right, and we get a lot of locks kind of happening. We get some wild things starting to happen like that. It's coming right down on top of her ear. I just rubbed my hand through a wet spot, reintroduce some color right there. All right, and then got to pull it down this direction, right along that ear. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, need to mix up just a little bit more. There we go. Good dense color. All right, I'm going to try to keep some of these highlights. We can soften them up later. There's a whole host of them right in through here. I'm going to just use the dry brush to kind of help me out there. And then it comes in and goes to a dark shape. Get a little more water in there. We'll get a little more movement. Got a nice dark bit right under that lock right there. Comes over, comes in like that. All right, so this one, we're going to come in. All right, cool. All right, and again, we have some, we'll try to keep a nice feathery application of the hair right on her forehead right there. And we'll come in and get it right along and sweeping around like this. There we go. All right, comes right down along the ear. So, right in like that. Get the inner portion of her ear, some of the ear structure right there. All right, cool. All right, so that all that big wet spot is really thinning out too much. Again, I'm using the traditional combination of that ultramarine and that's either a sepia or a Van Dyke brown. And we'll come in here and we're going to grab and do some of these locks right in through here. So. Yeah. Cool. And there's this great big ponytail thing happening. And then she has all sorts of locks coming off of it. So this really comes around and frames this jawline. Right in here like that. It even comes in and becomes the shadow. And you're going to see all sorts of things starting to happen right in there. Put a little more of a stroke right up here. All right, and I'm just going to do some of that there. There we go. And I'll worry about some of the fussy strands and stuff later on. All right. You got a wild thing happening right there. That's all right. I'm going to soften it out anyway. Good. That's looking nicely blocked. I'll be able to work with that. So now here's where I can take advantage and work with moving that chin over a bit. So I'm going to use that dark edge right there and we're going to push it that way. There we go. So I moved it a bit, and I'm going to flatten it out a little more this direction. All right, and then I'm looking for wet spots. I don't want to set my hand in it. And then I'm going to just do a little bit of drawing right here, like that. All right. And now I'm going to soften that up. Pull that color out a little bit. There we go. Put a little more blue in it. We definitely have a bluish tinge to that shadow right up here. So we'll go ahead and pull that on down to find that collar. Right there. There we go. And we'll soften this up. We'll pull that color on down this way as well. So there's definitely a nice bit of color and shadow pulling down here. All right, a big shadow right over here. Very soft shadow as well. All right, so we'll soften that out. We're going to soften this out right here. And right over here, just a little more. All right, I'm going to get a little dab of green in that. And a little more blue. A little more of that brown. There we go. And I'm going to pull this shadow right on down this way a little bit. Okay. We'll intersect it with that hair. And we'll just knock down the intensity of that right in through here. And then soften it out with water. Get a little more blue. There we go. I want to lose the edge right there. Soften this one up just a little bit. There it is. All right, same drill over here. This whole edge right here. Right here. Good sharp edge on the back side, and then it's going to feather out right along in through here and right through there. All right, cool. All right, a little more blue and brown. Again, I'm still just trying to get some of those shadow transitions nicely made from that bluish gray, dark saturated color right in through here into that collar, which is a little more green. It also needs to transition into her as well, right in here on that edge. I think that chin moving over helped a bit. All right. And like I said, there's a lot of very subtle colors right in through this area right there. So I think a lot of it's going to be done with once we can get in and start painting. And the face feels like it's definitely there. I can get in there and start adding a little more structure to the eyes and the mouth and some color variations. All right, that's just going to come on down. So is this. Again, I'll fix that in a minute. Okay. All right. I'm just going to paint a little structure, a little more structure work right in through here. That's all I was doing right there as well. All right. So the hair is drying, got a big wet spot here, got a big wet spot right over here. This all feels pretty good. There's a little dampness there, but the face is ready to go. So I'm going to switch over to a slightly smaller brush, and I'm going to go ahead and start working up the detail on the eyes with a thicker mixture of paint, really dark. So this is going to be some drawing and some structural work. Probably more of a stage 3. All the other stuff I've been doing is really kind of blocking and stage 1, stage 2 things. But here's where we need to start finding some specificity on the facial details. So I'm going to definitely come in. We got to get that little hook right there in the side of the nose. All right. And her whole brow is all about that eyebrow and the eyelid right there. And it's coming around and flares out like right in there. And then the rest of the eyebrow just kind of comes up and meets with the side of the face where the hair is. All right, so I'm going to leave that. That's going to be fairly sharp lines. All right, let me get the eye. So the upper portion of the eyelid comes around. There's the connects with that, and then we do have some eyelashes, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of block them in, and they also define the edge of the eye right there. I'm going to get the pupil and just very lightly get the lower portion of that eye defined. I'm going to get the nostril right here and get the right angle on it. And the same with this. That's the darkest area right there. Just a couple touches. And we're going to get the upper and lower lip, and we'll get this other eye. So we got the eyelashes right in here, but we're going to come up and around over the eye, get that defined, pull it down about right there. I'm going to do the same thing, just an irregular, broken, dark line. It's going to be something that I can set a highlight against right there. We got to define the upper eyelid. So pull it out, and then it's a nice thick shape right above it, and then it comes down into more of a line as it comes back and around over here. Okay. And then I want to get the pupil dropped in right there. And then we can work with the eyebrow. All right, and it swoops up, kind of up over here like this. All right, cool. All right, so we've got some definition on the facial features. We'll get that dark shadow right there on that. Those crease right there, and I'm going to put one right over here like that as well. All right. There we go. So, do a little drawing, a little edge work right there. And there's going to be a little bit, I'm going to throw a little red into it now. Right there under the lip. Right in here. Got Got that little shape. It's the darkest right under the lip, right there. And I'm going to get some blue mixed up over here. And I'm going to pull it right along this little pouty part of the lip right over there. And same thing right here. It comes around right there. Cool. All right, now that as well, I want to get a little denser blue, get a little more of that cerulean. Come on. There we go. Thicker mixture. I'm just going to drop it in on the eye real quick. All right, so let's get that eye. There we go. And over here. Cool. And then there is, I'm going to throw some of that blue into the shade right here, right along this edge of her face as well, right along that little spot, and then right there where the cheekbone is. I just laid it in. I'm going to soften it out. Pull it around. Soften it out this direction. There we go. So some nice blues. And then over here, I'm going to throw that blue right along this face as well. We'll soften it out this direction, pushing into the color. Okay. And I'm going to soften it again right here. Get some more of that. And then right here along the cheekbone, right there, and right along this lower portion. All right, and then soften everything out. It's a fairly sharp edge. I'm going to throw a little more right up in here and right up under the eye right there. Up, come on, cerulean. And right here. All right, now there's going to be some of that blue. Now you can do this a number of ways. A lot of times there's the artist will do the underpainting, the blue underpainting first, and that works. It's a nice technique. I'm just now kind of coming in onto the shadow areas and dropping in that coolness. And finding all of the colors that happen there on the face. I'm going to soften that out just a little bit. All right, and I'm going to throw a little bit of it under the eye here. Again, I'm going to throw a little more of it onto the eye, right in there. Cool that down. And then there's a ton, and this, again, this is just cerulean blue, and I'm using to add the coolness into the shades, that bluish undertone that's in skin. All right, so I'm going to throw a little bit of it over here on that side of the face as well. And it's really dark right over here, so I'm going to throw a lot of the blue of it right in there. All right, and then there's a nice dab of it right over here on that side. Softening it out. There we go. I'm going to throw a bit of it up here as well, right where the hair is meeting the scalp. Cool. Go ahead and pull that blue on down this further. All right, cool. And there's a spot right in through here. Right up in there. And we're going to cool it right off here as well. Yeah. All right. I'll go ahead and throw a little more out here. I'm also going to throw a little bit of it on this side, pull it away from the Cupid's bow right there. Soften it out. I just want that nice little highlight right there. Cool. All right, so on that side of the nose, and we'll pull that in. Now I'm going to come in with a little more warm colors on the face to warm it up a little more, but I think I've kind of worked up and have captured some of the form that the cool shadows that I just painted in are going to work in. So this is looking pretty good so far, as subtle as the lighting is on that reference. So everything's very, very subtle. So let me get a little bit bigger brush. Let me get a little more of that reddish. I want to put a little more just right up in here. I want to put some on the nose now, right in through here. And right on this edge right there. So this is really just a whole host of exercises in subtleties and intensifying those blushes. I'm looking here. I'm going to throw some on the underneath side of her eye, right over here as well. And a little more color on her brow. This whole chin needs a little more tone. I'm going to just throw a lot in there and I'll just knock it back and flesh it out a little bit. Cool. And this is all very cool right here and right up here. I see a lot of pencil marks in there. I'll try to erase that later. I'm going to throw a little bit of it down here. All right. And maybe just a smidge right over here. All right. Cool. All right, so everything's drying nicely. I don't have a lot of really wet spots. So the next stage is to come in really redefine and get a little more density in here, get the highlights, get the hair a little more dense, and we can work in some more of the strands, soften out some of those edges and things like that. Intensify the lip colors a little bit, find highlights, and boom, we should be done. So give me a few minutes and we'll work on that and get it wrapped up. All right, so here we are. We're ready to get started and make the final push into stage 3, finding all the detail, kicking up edges, adding saturation, and finding all the fun stuff. So this is where it's really going to start popping. So let's get started. All right, so the hair needs to be intensified, saturated, find the really deep, dark shadow areas. Lose some edges, soften some of these out here. We need to work on the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. I think we have a pretty good base for all the facial structures. It gives me enough, there's enough color there, I think, when I start working with the highlights. I can pop in highlights and everything will look good. So let's work on those lips and eyes, and we'll get those things going real quick. Get a little more red. They're kind of a ruby red, and we'll really kind of intensify that with another glaze right here. and we just kind of catch it right along in here. Irregular shapes, really thick right along here, down here along this bottom. It's got a fairly flat lower lip. All right, so good, that looks good. I'm going to intensify the blue in her eyes a little more. That's going to have to dry. Okay. And a little more, get a little more color, this purpley color right here. And on the underneath side of her nose, just to get that right there. Intensify that right there. Okay, so we're just going to bring that up. We're going to get a little darker bit right off over here. And right on the back side over here. And then she has a really good shadow under her nose. All right, so we'll pull that clear out. And comes right around. There we go. I'm going to get the shadow under her lip a little better. And right under her chin. That needs a little more of a lost edge. And right up here. This edge right here is bad. I'm going to intensify that edge right there. There we go. All right, I need to get a bigger brush. All right, so I'm going to use my number 5 brush here. And we're going to go after, get a little more of that brown mixed in, get a little more of that burnt sienna, raw umber, and some of that Van Dyke brown, get more of that deep blue. And got a good puddle here and a fairly sharp, nice point on that. And I think we can start working in and getting the hair developed a little more as all this is drying. All right, so we're just going to come in and really start working it. I'm going to try to use some of that dry brush to get those edges, and if it doesn't work quite enough, I will come back in and soften it up. But I need some nice shapes right in here to try to, there we go. Okay. Okay, and there's some really nice things happening there. I'll have to soften some of this. Got too much pigment in it. Not enough dry brush. There we go. Ah, come on. All right, now I'm going to soften some of it. It's just too sharp. Just knock back that. There we go. Same thing there. Cool. All right, so it lightens up right up in here, so. And then it starts to darken right in through here where that curl starts to happen. Good. Pull it down. here. Look at this underneath side of this curl right here. All right. And then it does kind of transition to that nice light brown dry brush we had right there. So pull it down, and then it transitions over here to that kind of a curl shape. Okay. And then this whole back side is very dark, but I do want to try to catch this lock of hair right in through here. Okay, I need a little more brown. It's a little too blue-green. Let me get a little more blue. There we go. All right, so we're back in business. This whole back side is dark, right up to right there. Comes back in. Here we go. It's a little bit of a highlight on this back side. It's a darker highlight, so I'm going to knock it back a little bit. And then it all gets very dark right back here. Okay. Again, it's all about that directional stroke you're trying to catch. Cool. All right, and as that's drying, I want to just soften some of it up. Doesn't need to be that strokey. Here we go. There we go. Cool. I'm going to throw a little more of a soft back there. All right, get a little more of that blue, a little more of that brown. Again, I'm working a fairly thick mixture, coffee to milk consistency, so it's got a lot of coverage ability to it. All right, so we're going to get right along that ear. Okay, and we'll just pull it out. Just dry brush. And it gets really sharp right here, right along that edge. All right. Here's where you can start getting interpretive. All right, the hair's looking pretty good. All right, now I'm going to pull it out into this. We'll get some of those strands. With that. And I'm going to grab that one. Cool. I'm going to dry brush, or not dry brush, but soften these out a little bit in there. There we go. More blue. More brown. All right. It's very wet in there, so that's good. Cool. Again, losing some of those edges right there. Pull that on out right there. Pull this on down. A little more definition right there. Good. All right, and there's a little more, it's a little darker right in through here. Okay. All right. Cool. All right, I'm going to switch to a much finer brush. Get my number 1 again. Same colors. All right, and maybe a little redder, maybe. But it's still fairly thick. I think I just watered it down too much. All right. So we can come in and really start doing some additional hair strokes. Softening things out. Getting some nice strands going. I'm looking for wet spots. I don't want to set my hand in them again. There we go. All right, now I'm going to come back in. It's the same color. I'm going to get a little more of that purpley color right here. I'm going to work on that lip. All right, so we're going to come right in here. Comes right up a little bit. Right there. And I'm going to get a little redder now. It's a dark red. And I'm going to just come right along the lower portion of her lip. Right there. Let that dry. And I'm going to come after the eye. Outer rim of the eye right there. Just with some darks. Get a little black in there now. There we go. It's too flat. There we go. All right. Get a little darker. Nope, too thin. Sorry. 9-finger fumble there. There we go. All right, cool. All right, so just bouncing around, getting the densities just right. I gotta see a spot back here on her ear I want to work on. So I'm going to get a little more of a structure right there. And I'm going to pull a little more hair right in through here. Cool. All right, so the lips are looking good. She's got some freckles, so I could quickly maybe just kind of splatter some freckles in here on her face. That's fairly thin, so they shouldn't dry too dark. Okay. So I'm going to just soften up some of them I don't like. All right, I'm going to throw a little more of a right there. Right there. Get a little more on their chin right over here. I'm going to get a little more bluish to that. Okay. Just soften that out over here. Cool. All right. And that's dried enough right over here. I'm going to grab my kneaded eraser and let's see if I can pull that pencil up. And yeah, that kind of cleaned that up, that little spot. Lighten this up. Right like that. Okay. All right. So we've got some freckles we splattered on. I'm going to get rid of that one right there. Cool. I'm going to soften it right here. That's that shadow. Cool. All right. And then, all right, I remembered, I remembered this time to kind of soften up my pro white. So there's a nice little highlight right there on her lip, right there. There's a nice little highlight right there on her nose. Get enough thickness to it. There it is. There it is. All right. We have a little highlight right over here. And we have highlights on her lip. We'll just touch those in. Right there. There's even kind of a highlight right there on the chin. We can throw them right in there. I would do one right on the upper edge of her lip. Just a nice little mark right there. Right there, underneath side of it. I'm going to throw one right here, right on that chin. There's a great highlight on the ridge of her nose, and it just really kind of streaks right along this whole side. And there's going to be one right here. I'll throw one right up over here, right along this edge right here. And I'm going to throw one right along this back edge right there, along the ear right here. All right, now I'm going to throw one right on the eye, and right there, and right there. There's a nice one right here, and I'm going to throw one right there. And then on the underneath side of the eye, right next to that black line this is why that was put in there. Give me a nice dark line to go against, right there. And we'll throw this one right there, like that. We'll throw one right on the edge of that. All right. Very nice. All right, and then there's really right there on that Cupid's bow. Get a little thicker highlight right there. And there's one right up in here. Gonna stroke it down right like that. All right. And there's a few that I would add. In the hair as well. So I'm just going to streak a few in there. We'll throw one right here and right up here. Cool. Good. All right, I'm going to throw one right here as well. So as soon as my highlights dry there, I'll be able to do a little more work with that up in the hair. I'm going to soften that out a little bit. So, all right, so give me a minute. As soon as that's done, we'll wrap it up with the highlights in the hair and we'll be there. So give me a second. All right, it's still a little damp there yet, but I just realized I have some spots I could be working on. So I'm going to get a little more of that Viridian and some of this dark color right here, maybe some more blue. Get that kind of that neutrally blue-gray right here. That's perfect. That'll work. And I'm just going to kind of scrape in and get a little more color on that nasty spot down there. And we'll come in here and we'll just fix some of these things. All right, so I'm just dropping in some color. And I really don't, you know, I'm not terribly worried about it being that descriptive. I just wanted to kind of fix that bloom. Add a little more structure and color into the collar there. Cool. And this definitely needs a little more saturation right in through here. And right up here where it's supposed to be dark. Get a little more of that color. Get a little more blue. There it is. Come on. Okay. Good. And I can even come in, just hit that just a little more like that. Cool. All right, the hair is drying. It's still a little damp. There's a real wet spot right there. And I'm going to throw some of this purple right into this shadow. Maybe a little more blue too. There we go. Right under her chin. That needs to be a blue. It's so cool under there. Good. All right, I'm going to intensify that cheekbone a little more. That needs to be a little more aggressive, I think. Sorry, I just found a wet spot. I just made a mess. All right, so I'm going to come in. I'm going to hit that with some of that blue right in through here. Get that cheekbone a little more pronounced, and then we'll soften it out a little bit. Some bluish purple, and then I'm going to come along right down here, add a little more. All right, and maybe just a smidge of it right up here, and then soften it out. All right, now I'm going to go back. I'll grab my white, and I'm going to just kind of touch up a few of the highlights on her hair right in here. So unload my brush. It's a very thick mixture of white. This is opaque white, so we can have some fun with it. We'll throw some right up here, some dry brush. There we go. And we'll do a little dab of it right over here. This is so wet, but I'm not planning on highlights right there. I think it's dry enough, right? Oop, I just had my hand in the wet spot here. So I'm going to come around, bend around funny. Okay. And maybe a few right up here, like that. And if you're feeling real frisky, we can even add a couple of them out here, right in this spot. And I don't see any. There's a couple right over here I could maybe do. Like that. All right. And one more time, just a little bit bigger brush, my number 5. I'm just going to soften this up right there. I want to touch up just a little bit on the interior. I'm just going to lift a little bit right there.
on the eye. All right, and a little bit right there.
Cool. And last but not least, I'm going to get just a smidge of black.
I'm going to hit that pupil just a little bit more right there. And right there.
All right, so there we go. That is a not so quick tutorial on painting a scary face, a pretty girl, trying to work with all the subtle nuances of colors and get that face to read in three-dimensional form, all the various insets and everything. So I hope this tutorial was helpful and gives you the confidence to give it a try. Don't get frustrated if it doesn't work out the first few hundred times you try it, but it will be something that you will want to do and to practice and to get better at. So, hey, I hope this tutorial was helpful. Give me a like and a subscribe if it was. And if you want more information on drawing and dealing with human figures, I have downloadable links in the video description. Takes you over to my website that you can download Loomis and Bridgman reference material. And there's a ton of links out there for brushes and supplies. I have those links in the video description as well. And if you think I'm doing anything on this channel, providing these free tutorials for everybody to learn from, please give me a $5 a month membership on my Patreon channel. I truly do appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. So.